critical. Can we change how we test safety critical systems in new ways, and can we improve on these regulatory requirements? That's the key questions we want some light on. So.
First, may I ask, do you have team members which you would also like to call on stage to help you a little bit in the debate?
Yes, why not?
Of course.
Definitely.
Christopher?
Ulla or Adnan, if you would like
Can you
to
please
join.
step up so that we have a little bit more of a panel here? And so I will give this to you.
I think you need to have the...
You don't get away with that.
First, a little bit about the experience. So you told us that you convinced these external assessors, and you have some evidence for that. But how did you actually approach these assessors to buy into this project?
Well, essentially, we were very honest with the sensors, and we have openly described to them the strategy that we plan to follow. And then, of course, there were questions and debates that we had to do in order to convince them that this is a way that we can do in order to start using our simulator. Of course, therefore, at the end, we had to do a lot of iterations, as I told you, in order to reach to a statement that now we have a simulator that is good enough for TCMS testing. And for the assessors, we simply had to create the proper documentation that describes all this process in a simple and reasonable manner, and of course provide all the evidence with the test results showing that we followed this process, we described this process, we followed it, and this is the result. And now we can start use the simulator.
What was the lead time for all of this? Was it years, months, weeks?
For the first project, when we actually described the process and we really had to convince for the first time that the assessor that this is a strategy that we could follow, I think it took like 1.5 years or so, maybe even 2 years, in order to reach a conclusion that now we have a lab that we can use for validation. But then for the second attempt, that we had also a different assessor, it was only a matter of a few months, 3 or 4 months or something, in order to be able basically to execute this process of writing the test specification and going to the train for testing and comparing and so on.
Okay. So same question to Saab, and I don't know whether it's Joachim or Christopher. But so you're also trying to negotiate with your certification authorities to integrate this mutation testing. So how are you in that process?
Yes, we have done similar things before, qualified tools
Step forward a bit.
to replace activities in our to automate activities and the strategy that we are using or going to use is to collect empirical evidence. We will compare when we do our manual test case inspections, what kinds of problems do we find in test cases, and then we will compare that with the mutation testing results and what we find when we look at the mutation testing results. At Saab, there's an employee who represents the authorities who knows about mutation testing, and he supervised one of the thesis projects, so he's he's on track.
And so there as well, how long does it take to convince these external assessors to buy into that? Is that weeks, months, years?
It has taken a lot of time for the technique to mature, and we tried to use open source tools available, but that didn't work, so we developed our own tool, and there's a lot of documentation regarding the qualification. You need requirements, and it takes years.
And so then a question to both of you. You're kind of best class, so your external assessors say yes, for you that's okay. Is there any chance that this will eventually be adopted into the real standards, and that they say like this will be the common practice for all other safety critical systems?
That is a really good question, actually. I don't know the answer. I don't.
You don't know the answer.
Yeah, or yeah. I hope.
Maybe I can comment a bit. Ola Selin from Bombardier also. I've been part of this process over the years, and assessment is very much a matter of trust. So you have to invest a lot of time to really show the assessor and have a close dialogue and really convince them that this is as good as doing it on a real thing. And the next thing, now Athanasius showed is hardware in the loop. Next thing is, of course, to have software in the loop. And again, prove that the software in the loop is as good as the real thing. So you have to be prepared to invest a lot of money in these dialogues and discussions and accept that the assessors is not easy to convince. I mean, their job is really to be a bit resistant and really be hard to convince. So accept that and do the job, and then gradually you can reach results. Maybe you will also comment.
Really good answer.
Yeah.
It's the same problem for us. No problem, I mean, we have to overcome it.
Can you show us slide 25?
25.
I go back. Stop. Stop. Which one?
25.
I don't know what 25 is.
It's here. One more. Here maybe.
Yeah.
Or
This whole evaluation, this is one of the things where I think that the evaluators don't really understand what Agile is. Agile is speed versus quality. This focuses only on quality, and quality is then without bugs.
yes.
But it also has to do with speed. And so how does this integrate this whole testing and validation with sprints, where you talk about sprints of 6 weeks, and the testing takes longer than the 6 weeks. So how does that all work?
Yeah, I think this is the next challenge that we have to deal with, because of course we move towards an agile way of developing our software, and therefore we will have to convince our assessors that even doing it so, this will not mean that we will reduce the quality of the software and the documentation as well. But I think from an assessor point of view, I think they will be happy and they don't maybe really care what exactly we have done, as long as we can prove that the processes that we have defined internally in the company are compliant to the standard, first of all, and then second of all, we have correct documentation in place, and we have also software of high quality. So the assessor maybe is not that interesting on how exactly have you developed your software, as long as you can prove to me that the software follows the standard.
So going back then to the shift project and this whole prioritization and selection, essentially what you will do next is not running all the tests on all of the software. So how
Yes.
will you convince your regulatory bodies to deal with that?
Yeah, I'm not sure. This is also another challenge that we need to tackle. But of course, we need to be smart, and we need to see which test cases we select to be executed in the lab, and which test cases have to be executed on the train. Or maybe, yeah.
Maybe I can comment a bit. I mean, the automation is not just to automate the actual testing, it's to automate the generation of all the documentation and everything. So you kind of fast and easy can generate this documentation that is needed to get the assessment. And I think that is part of the SHIFT project also, to see that we can work with model-based engineering, model-based testing and so on, and really generate all the evidence that is needed for the assessment, and to get it done in a very efficient and fast way. Automation is the road to go.
Saab, anything to comment on this?
Faster, better.
Yeah, I think you can also differentiate between informal and formal verification. When you develop software and you want fast feedback, then it could be really helpful to prioritize tests and maybe not always execute the full test suite.
But do you, for instance, think that you will try to say to the regulatory authorities, we will not execute all the tests all of the time?
I don't think we can do that.
But isn't that the basis of automation? That you can rerun your test suites many times. So the goal is not to take stuff away. The goal is making it so fast to test so you can automate and run it over and over and over many, many times, right? So this is what automation gives you. If it would have been manual, that would have been impossible, right? But having the automation makes it possible to test and retest. Even if you do the slightest change, the cost of the slightest change is huge, right? But if you have all the test cases automated, that's possible. So I think the test automation in itself enables retesting, so it's actually better tested than it ever was. But before, if you had a problem, right, the cost of fixing that problem was huge. Now, with automation, you will save a lot, I think, in that. But I think also the problem is convincing it's equally good tested, and that's proving that that's the difficulty, I think. But, yeah, we also have our regulatory in telecom, but not on the safety critical yet. But I mean, really, the new 5G technology enables, for instance, operating on people through a telecom. I mean, this is what we're going to see in the future, that you can do surgery live. And 5G technology have also says you can remotely drive the car, etc. This stuff was not possible before. So I see the new technology will require also Ericsson to go into more safety critical verification and testing methods, proving that are, even if we have huge large scale system, that they do work, right? And we can trust them. So I think we're coming closer together than we have been. So my question to this panel is, what would you say to Boeing, for instance? What would you say to all the safety critical car, automotive out there? So do you have a message? Could we maybe start with you, Adnan?
Make it work, right? Okay, so first to shortly introduce myself. So I'm a researcher, and that allows me to talk about things how I assume in a perfect world how it will look like. But while here we have a set of engineers who actually do it the way that it is possible to be done today. I don't think there is a silver bullet or a solution to how to be fast and be the first on the market and still satisfy and be in safety, but regulatory bodies, it's all about trust and convincing agency that what you're doing is good enough. But what I'm proposing as a scientist or as a researcher is that, in my opinion, you shouldn't produce evidence or documentation dedicated to a regulatory agency. My opinion is that your work that you do for yourself internally should be enough for regulatory agency to understand how you deal with the quality of your system. So for me, it's a waste if you need to have a documentation specifically created for an assessment. It's I don't know, maybe again, me being researcher in an ideal world, but wouldn't it be great if regulatory assessors would just have a look at the tests and the test would tell you everything about the quality? There is no need for a dedicated documentation. Me being too optimistic. But yeah, definitely with the help of automation and being able to re-execute the tests, we are in a much better position to convince the regulatory bodies that we are having quality in our products.
Fantastic answer. So, Christopher.
I think the software worked as intended in that case, but I think they could have put more effort in the system safety assessment and to use more sensors and think about the bad things that can happen. That's my short answer.
I think I will agree a lot with Adnan, based on my experience with the strategy that we have defined. Often I was asking myself, okay, why do we really do this process? Will we improve the quality of our software, or it's only to collect evidence that we have to show to the assessor. So there, I think we have to ask ourselves and find a common and the best optimal way to balance a little bit the documentation part together with what we need to do to actually provide a software that works, because this is the most important thing, I think, in this case.
Yeah, great.
Okay, I'm a researcher too, by the way. But so in Belgium, we work a lot on the digital twin, which is actually what you're doing. And there as well, it's about how well can you trust your digital twin. And I think that's going to be where we need to focus on in Belgium, and I guess here too. How do you trust it?
Coming back to this Boeing accident, I mean, driving a plane is more complex than driving a train. But anyhow, when you automate everything and so on, you have to be aware that humans also interact with the systems. And humans are not perfect. And so you have to test your system also together with humans. In that case, I think that they trusted the pilots too much, that they should do rational decisions in short times and so on. Humans don't do that. So you have to test your advanced system also on real humans and not just automate everything, but put the humans into the loop when you do the final testing and see that they can handle the complex system that we have created.
And I jump directly back into the technology. Mutation testing, is that the future for the avionics industry? Yes, that's what I think, and that's why we are putting so much effort into it. We can see that we can use it to lower the cost, to develop the flight critical software, but also to improve the quality for the mission critical software.